Right. Good morning, everyone. I think we will get going. So thank you very much for dialing in this morning. As you heard, my name is Rebecca Jennings. I'm Principal Client Advisor here at Global Reviews based in the European offices. What we're going to do this morning is going to spend a little time looking at our latest research around UK current accounts, looking at a couple of studies that are ongoing around UK current accounts. Firstly, we're going to think about the marketing effectiveness benchmark, which is looking at how consumers find a current account brand, and what is now starting to persuade them to switch brands, moving away from the inertia, perhaps, that has been a factor in this market for many years. So how is the web playing a part in persuading people to change current accounts, and how they're finding the brands when they go out to do that, and also touching on the sales effectiveness benchmark that we run, which is the next stage of that decision, which is looking at the websites themselves of current account providers and saying how effective do these sites sell to consumers when they come to research accounts and then go through to buying. So we're going to spend, as I say, this morning about an hour looking at our sales and marketing effectiveness benchmarks. Thank you very much for dialing in. The webinar is being recorded, so if at the end you would like a copy of the slides and the webinar, please do let us know. We're very happy to send you that across, and also for colleagues who can't make it today. So very quickly, going to touch on who Global Reviews are. Then I'm going to talk about this digital marketing experience study that's recently been completed, suggesting perhaps is banking inertia starting to become a thing of the past? Is the web proving disruptive in consumers' research patterns to actually push them into switching, obviously combined with the latest changes in switching and the speedy switching, fast switching that the banks now have to provide to consumers. This is finally going to disrupt the inertia that's been a factor in this market. Going to look at some of the results and insights from that, and also going to look at that point, some of the digital sales experience benchmark study research insight that shows us why some of the brands might be doing better in the marketing experience than others. I'm going to talk you quickly through the methodology of the DME and the DSE at the beginning, so you know where the data has come from. So very quickly, who we are, in case somebody on the line hasn't come across us before. We have been operating in sales and marketing experience benchmarking online for around 15 years now across Europe, UK, and the Australian market, starting to make tendrils into the American market too, which gives us the most comprehensive set of both qualitative and quantitative data across a multitude of industries in those markets. As you can see here, just a selection of some of the brands in the European and UK market we've been working with, crossing banking, finance, travel, mobile, energy, retail, multiple types of insurance, and into betting, sports betting. So extensive experience across these industries for many years. Personally, I've been working in digital marketing and media for around 18 years these days with Global Reviews, and previous to that Forrester Research and the BBC. So extensive set of both qualitative and quantitative insight across these industries. The methodologies that we use, particularly the DSE, identify the issues that 95% of your consumers will experience when they try to buy from you online. They are a combination of getting consumers to do tasks, consumers to do research, combined with best practice audit that we conduct internally. It's a very effective tool to identify the vast majority of the issues that your consumers will experience. Unrivaled knowledge of digital best practice across those brands and across those markets internationally. So that's really who we are and where we've come from. What we do these days is focused primarily, not exclusively, but primarily on the front half of the customer purchase journey. So what we're going to talk about today are looking at those first three pieces, a little bit more on the marketing effectiveness. We're going into the sales effectiveness too. So the marketing effectiveness benchmark deals primarily with the discover and the consider phases of that journey. So how do consumers find a brand in a market when they're looking to switch or buy? So in this particular market, how do they find current account providers? It's a blank screen study where consumers are asked to say start with a blank screen and go and choose and find a provider for their nominated product. And we can track everything they do. So the marketing effectiveness is based on consumers' behavior, consumer insight, what they actually do in their process of research, what they say about that experience, why they make the decisions they make. So how easily can customers find you? How strong is your attraction? Are you managing to change people's minds? Do they come in preferring other brands and finally choose yours, or vice versa? Do they come in preferring your brand and then finally choose others? And what can you do about that? What is making those decisions? How are the consumers changing their minds and making those final decisions? How are they choosing that final brand? So going into slightly to the consider phase there as well. What we're also going to touch on is the sales effectiveness benchmark, which looks at that next phase in that consideration journey, which is the consider and act phases. So this is looking at their brand websites now. So again, this is a combination of consumers being asked to go to specific websites, do a number of very specific tasks on those sites, and give us insight into how they feel about those tasks, their attitude, their effectiveness, their efficiency, their ratings of that experience, combined with the best practice audit. This is an audit conducted by internal experts here at Global Reviews, who go through the sites with around 350 individual criteria based on research that we've done, based on a survey of 1,000 consumers, and obviously based on our extensive knowledge. So it's a study that combines both the consumer's insight and activity with the best practice. And that looks at this consider phase, how do you engage consumers and help them match a product or service to their needs, and then also taking that next step into the actual act. How easy is it to actually purchase or engage with you to buy the product or service from you? So that's really what we're going to talk about this morning. We're going to look about, start with the marketing effectiveness. How do people find brands in this market? How do they make decisions on which brands to visit? How do they make decisions on which brands to shortlist? So they've looked at the wider market. They've decided on a shortlist of, say, 3 or 4 current account providers that look interesting. They're going to spend more time in researching them. Then how do they make that final decision at this point to, okay, this brand I think looks most interesting for me. They're the ones I'm going to interact with. And then at the end, we're going to touch on, well, what does the sales effectiveness benchmark tell you about how effective these brands are, and what can we learn from the insights there. So we're going to talk about this part of the journey. So very quickly, where does the data come from? The DME, the Digital Marketing Effectiveness, this is this blank screen study that looks at the discover phase of that journey we were just seeing. This is a national study. It's based on usually at least 200 participants. It is somewhere between 200 and 300 normally, qualified as being in the market in the next 3 months to either choose or switch a provider for a product. So in this case, it's current accounts. We also do credit cards, insurance, and many, many other brands, other products, but this particular one is for current accounts. They are designed and selected to be representative of the market. It's an opportunity to add consumers a fitter target profile. If you're a client, you can say, okay, actually you only want to look at 18 to 35-year-olds, for example, but what we're going to be looking at today is 300 participants who are matching the general UK market profile. They download a little applet, a little program that fixes onto their browser. That means we can track everything they do, and this is very important. It's a blank screen study. They do it in their own natural buying environment. So they're at their own home computers, their own laptops, in their home environment there, so they're comfortable, they know the computer, they're not being watched over their shoulder by somebody making notes all the time. So the way we track what they do is through this piece of technology on their browser, so we can see how long it takes them to do things, which sites they go to, their click stream, so do they go search to a research site, do they go back to search, do they go to a brand, where do they go, how long do they take, what do they do in the process. We also ask them a number of questions about the experience, so pre-research, who do you know in this market, who at this point, before you've done any research, do you think you would prefer, so what kind of legacy insight do they come with, what kind of preferences do they come with based on other knowledge of the brand before they actually do the online research. Then we ask them obviously the post-research questions, okay, would you choose now? Have you changed your mind? Why have you changed your mind? What's going into that decision process? What's most important for you in this process? So we have their insight into what they do, both pre and post activity, as well as their behavior tracking, and that's what we're going to look at. I mentioned shortlist earlier, and that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to look at how consumers go from a pre-research, oh, I might have a preference for this brand because I know a bit about them, or we usually get, probably a third of consumers comes and goes, actually, no, I haven't got a preference at this point, I really am wide open. We ask them to do that research to find a product. We follow them down this funnel from awareness and initial preference through the research they do, how they do the research, who do they visit in that journey in terms of brands and other types of site, who do they shortlist, so which of those brands would actually make it to that short list of brands that spend more time investigating, so that's maybe 2, 3, 4 brands that spend more time investigating, and then finally who drops out at the end as the preferred brand. So this is what this DME is about, is looking at what is the current account funnel, if you like. How do people go through the funnel? Where do they drop out for your brand? Where are they going? If they started as a fan of your brand, where do they drop out in the process? Who are they going to instead? Who are the preferred users, and how do they make their decisions? So that's the DME, which we're going to touch on. The DSE we're going to touch at the end just takes that the next step into the websites of the brands themselves. So then we're going to touch on how effective brands are at these different phases of the consider phase and the act phase. When we get into the having decided which brands they're going to visit, they go to the sites and say, well, actually, okay, well, how is this website actually engaging with me across those two phases? So we look at initial engagement. Do you immediately grab users' attention, say, look, we are somebody to trust, we are somebody to do business with, or we have a product that will suit your needs? Do you introduce your options clearly? Can users find which products that the products they're interested in? Can they evaluate them? Can they find a product that actually suits their needs? Can they go through a quote process or go through a process of evaluation that says, which of your products is most interesting to me? And then how do you facilitate that final decision once they've decided to transact with you? How do they ask questions? Why are they choosing you? This is an absolutely vital piece of the puzzle we've got here when they've got probably 3 or 4 different products from different brands that all look very similar, and they're finally making that, okay, they're all very similar, they're all offering me very similar things, so I'll go with this one, and what is it about your site that pushes them over that decision at this point? Then into the act phase, do I do this online, do I do this on the phone, what's the different channels that I have, and then looking at the actual effectiveness of the application itself. And again, this is consumer-based, consumers are asked to do tasks each stage, and it's supplemented with this best practice audit combined, and the overall output is a score, how easy is it to buy from you, and then obviously scores at each of these different steps. And the 2 studies, as you can see, do fit in very well in terms of starting with the discover phase with the DME. How do you find brands? How do you make an initial preference decision? How do you make a sort of quick initial decision on who you're going to go with? And then how does the website actually help me find out more about you and finally make that purchase decision? As it might be obvious, I've talked through that, there's an awful lot of data involved in these two studies. There's something in the region of 500 data points, for example, for the DSE. There's a couple of hundred for the DME. So I'm not going to spend the next hour showing you lots and lots and lots and lots of data. That's not what this is about. This is about showing you some of the top-line results and what it means for different brands and how it's changing the current account market. The data is all available in our online portal as clients. Clients can log in and see all their data from all the periods that they're subscribed to. The DME usually runs 4 times a year, the DSE twice a year, so it's all available there to look at. But rest assured, I'm not going to talk you through hundreds of pieces of data this morning. So what we're going to start talking about, what we're going to talk about is, as I say, that online research is starting to change the way people think about their financial services products, specifically current accounts. Will they be more predisposed to switching? Will they be thinking about how the product that suits them, how do they find it? 55% of consumers have actually never switched current account, according to some very recent research from Which, and that is something that the market is trying to address. Which also suggested that the accounts were using vague language and baffling charging structures, which made finding a product, specifically finding a product that suited my specific needs as a consumer, very hard. And that's a problem because that's something that consumers absolutely increasingly want to do. They are increasingly aware that there are different products out there on the market that do different things. When you ask consumers what's the most important thing you're looking for when you're finding a new current account, suitability for my specific needs is actually the most important thing. When we ask consumers in real life what would be important, suitability for my specific needs is the most important decision when getting a new current account. So it's absolutely vital that going into a market where it's quicker and easier to switch, that brands communicate that they have products that can suit people's specific needs and that they're easy and clear to transact with. So let's have a look at the market at the moment and where brands are being effective and not. As I say, the DME is about looking at this funnel. Top of the funnel, when we start the research, we ask consumers, do you already have a preference for a brand? Is there a brand in the market that if we pushed at the minute, you'd go with? Remember, these are people who are already in the market thinking about getting a new current account, thinking about switching, perhaps thinking about getting their first account or getting a second account. So they're thinking about this. Who do they already have a preference for? We found that 25% said, I don't really, at the minute, have a preference. I would just look at the offers. And the rest of the market, with 75%, was sort of fairly well spread. We have other markets in which this is considerably more concentrated, but we'll think about this as we go through. But 15% said, okay, at this point, I probably prefer Santander, 11 Barclays, 10 Nationwide, 9 Halifax, TSB, NatWest, First Direct, First HSBC, Co-op, etc., getting in the single digits. So fairly well spread, but the leader at the minute, Santander. And remember, this is pre-research. And what's this being driven by? Well, unsurprisingly, it's been driven a lot by previous experience. 59% of people saying, well, actually, it's because I've used them before. I'm choosing them at this point. I am gravitating towards a brand that I already have experience of. I already perhaps have a credit card with or another account with. So it's this sort of demonstration of this inertia that says, I've had an experience with these guys already. It was all right. It's too hard to do anything else to make another decision. I'm going to go with these guys. You are starting to get other functionality in here at this point, so allow for online banking, and this will be a trend as we go through. People are saying, actually, it's really absolutely vital now that I can do this through the internet, I can do my banking online. But at the moment, at the beginning of this process, people are falling back on a previous experience in terms of choosing a brand. And we'll see, as they start to do their research, how that changes. So, blank screen study, they go off and do this research to find themselves a suitable brand, a new provider for a current account. 87% at some point in the process use search websites. So many of us now use search websites simply as a default when we talk to consumers, even though when we talk to consumers at the beginning, there's a very high awareness of a lot of these brands before you even come into the study. So people know, for example, that that Barclays do credit current accounts. People know that Santander do current accounts. People still gravitate towards a search engine to do their initial research or to do their initial journey. And in many times, it's not even looking for a brand. It's saying, okay, they go to the search website, they just type in Santander. So they really will know the URL, but they're using the search simply because it's a default. It's the first thing on their website, first thing on their journey, because they always go to a search website. So still absolutely vital, even if you've got an extremely well-known brand, to have the presence there and to have the call to action and to have the specific link from the search to the specific page on the site, not the home page, not the generic landing page. It's absolutely vital, even if your brand is well known. 74% obviously then at this joint journey went into brand websites of some sort. 37% went to aggregators who might bring a lot of products together. This is sort of money.co.uk, for example. And 20% at this point went to a research website. So we're talking something like Money Saving Expert, where they might go and say, okay, I'll have a look at this, some ratings or reviews, or see what other people have thought about the current accounts market. So this is the inputs at this point into starting to think about what your current account choice might be. So influenced by search and by brand, but also by aggregators and by research websites. In terms of popular journeys overall, this is for all brands, all the consumers in the market, actually 70% of them started at a search engine. As I said earlier, so 87% at some point used one, 70% actually started at one. As I say, even though 97% of them had heard of a current account provider, knew some current account provider, 70% of them just still started at a search engine in this research. 31% of them started a search and then went to a brand. 9% went from that search to an aggregator. So these are the sort of most popular journeys. And again, 9% started a brand and then went back to search, having perhaps gone to a brand that they know and thought, actually, let's have a look who else is in the market. So search playing a really important part here in terms of not only giving people ideas, but also just an integral part of the messaging that the people are seeing. It's not necessarily showing them brands they haven't heard of. In fact, that's probably unlikely. But what it is fixing marketing messages in consumers' search patterns, in consumers' research patterns from those brands, even though they've already heard of. It's just a way of almost, again, aggregating what's out there. In terms of visits, as I said earlier, we track exactly what they do. We can know exactly where they went and what they did when they went there. So we know which brands were the most visited in the process. That, at this point, was Santander. Santander, 30% of people visited the Santander brand, followed closely by Nationwide at 23, NatWest at 22, Barclays at 19, just dropped off. We saw earlier that Barclays actually had quite a high initial preference. It's actually the second most high initial preference, but has dropped down a little bit here in terms of visits, and there are going to be a number of reasons for that. We'll see in a minute that some consumers shortlist brands they don't visit because they know that brand is going to be on their shortlist anyway, and they don't at this point have to visit the brand to know that. Some of the brands they visit are the ones they're less sure about, and they're not quite sure whether they want to put them on the shortlist or not. So that's the reason why some of these seem a little low. Yeah, 18% Halifax, say NatWest 22%. So the bigger brands you might expect perhaps coming in here in terms of visits. The next thing we ask is, at this point, which brands would make it to your shortlist? So we've got to the stage where you've done some research. We're now getting to a smaller group of brands that you'd spend more time now actually going in and researching their products more deeply. Would you qualify for each of these products? Because a lot of them have qualifying demands and minimum deposits per month, etc. So would you qualify? What is the application process? So now we're starting to winnow out brands. We're starting to get brands fall out of that funnel when we ask for which brands would make the shortlist. And as you can see, interestingly again here, you've got Santander leading the market with 51% of consumers would put them on their shortlist. Barclays, who had the second highest initial choice, has now dropped down to 5th. We're now down to 27% of people who would put them on their shortlist, which would suggest perhaps that Barclays are doing something that's losing consumers in this selection process. But we'll see a little bit more about that later, why that might be. But you can immediately see some of the brands doing better here, and some of the brands doing worse at Halifax. First Direct again going the other way. First Direct actually started the process with just 5% of people with initial preference for them, and now they've got to stage a couple of steps down the process. 29% of people saying, actually no, these guys are going to make my shortlist. Haven't made the final preference yet. We'll do that in a moment, but they've made it to the extent that they've got onto people's shortlists for choice of a current account. So they've managed to really leverage the search, leverage the aggregators, and leverage the first impressions, really, essentially is what we're looking at here, of their own website, to push themselves up that list of shortlisted brands. And also when we start to think about why people are shortlisting them, we start at this point to see products and offers as easy to understand. We're still looking at functionality. Functionality is very important, as we saw earlier, still allowing for online banking. Familiarity with their names is important too at this point still. But now we're starting to get their products and offers were easy to understand. The influence of my previous experience is getting less at this point, and it's getting more important perhaps that they do know the name, but the products and offers were easy to understand. They're doing some research. They're looking, say, at the search and initial impressions and initial expectations of the websites themselves. They're saying, actually, no, these guys do appear to have products that might suit my needs. They're easy to understand. I can look at the website and understand what it is that they're offering. And this is where you start to get some of those smaller brands to start to perhaps do better at this point in our funnel, because their websites are showing very clearly what they have to offer, that they are easy to understand, that it's easy for consumers to switch, it's easy for them to understand what the product will give them as to suit their specific needs. So we're starting to see at this point the website starting to erode a little bit that inertia in terms of, oh, I'm just going to gravitate to somebody that I've used before. We're still getting the influence, still the need to trust you, still familiar with the names, but we're starting to think about, okay, the website is breaking down some of that inertia. It's always interesting at this point to start looking at some of the ratios. This is a little bit of a complicated slide, which is why we've cut down the number of brands that are on it, rather than the 20 or 30 that we have altogether. But it's starting to say, okay, well, how efficient is your funnel? Where are you losing people in this funnel from initial awareness? So this is the first thing here is showing the percentage of consumers who spontaneously mentioned pre-research that this brand, they knew this brand offered current accounts. So it's unprompted pre-research awareness. As you can see, that varies very strongly between brands. Santander, Barclays, Lloyds, NatWest, over half of consumers spontaneously mentioning them as providers of current accounts. Nationwide, less than a third. First Direct, just 12%. Pretty low, a little surprisingly low actually. I would have thought it would have been a little bit higher than that, but they're coming from a base where they've not got a huge amount of pre-research awareness. But actually when you look at visits, 14% of people visited them, and that's not that far behind some of these much bigger brands. So something they're doing in terms of their search, in terms of their aggregator strategy, is bringing their brand to people's minds just as efficiently, or encouraging people to visit the brand almost as efficiently as many of these other brands in the market. And also when you look at the shortlisted, 29% of people shortlisting the brand. And that compares very favorably. In fact, it's above Barclays at 27, Lloyds at 27, NatWest at 26. It's only just behind Halifax at 32. who has started with a much, much bigger pre-research awareness. So something First Direct is doing in terms of their online strategy, and they say this is going to be a combination at this point of search strategy, aggregator strategies, and the initial impressions, what have we got, the products on the website, is being very effective in getting them onto that shortlist. Santander, the most effective, you say 51% of people have put them on the shortlist, pushing through that awareness and visits and managing to get themselves onto shortlist. But at this point it's interesting to start to see not just the final volumes, but also those ratios. How are people converting from awareness? How are you converting from visits? Because obviously if you're First Direct looking at this, going, actually, our conversion is really good. So if we can put some more people in the top of this funnel, if we can perhaps get a bit more pre-brand awareness, get some more people pushing through to visit the website, then actually that final 29% is going to go up pretty quickly, because the conversion is actually better, significantly better than, say, for example, NatWest and Barclays in our study here, who are really essentially one of the key losers here. They're not getting on as many shortlists as you might expect in terms of their initial pre-research awareness and their initial preferences. We saw Barclays was the second highest initial preference, but again, something they're doing is having the opposite effect of they're not plugging those holes in this funnel as people go through the decision tree. So finally, in this shortlist process, you've got awareness, visited, shortlist, and of course the final decision is, well, at this point, if you were to make a decision on which brand you would go with, which would you go with? So the leading brand chosen at this point by 22% of consumers is Santander, fairly closely followed by Nationwide at 17, then First Direct at 14, Halifax 12, NatWest on 10%. So having gone through this piece of research, at this point in their research journey, consumers are saying, okay, this I'm pretty sure is the brand that suits my needs the best. And again, let's take a step back and look at some of those ratios, and we can really see where some brands here are losing and failing to plug the holes in this funnel. It's more of a sieve than a funnel, shall we say, I think, for Paul Barclays here. Whereas others are keeping some of those, a higher percentage of those consumers through the process and converting from that shortlist. And the conversion from shortlist to final is very much more about what's the website doing at that point to show me that this is a brand that suits my needs. Awareness, visits to shortlist is more of a combination of search, aggregator strategies. Are you getting the right messages out there? Are you getting the right calls to action? Does the website, when you click on those landing pages, emphasize that call to action? Does it reinforce it? Does it have the same message? And now we're getting to that that final step here, where the flip from shortlist to final choice is more about the initial impressions and what the website is showing consumers about the brands. And can you pull consumers over that final choice by showing them clearly what it is that you have on offer? And here, look at that final ratio of final choice to shortlisted. Highest here is First Direct. They may not have got the highest percentage in the end of final choices, so 14% puts them fourth, but actually their conversion rate again here from shortlist to final choice is the highest. 48% of people who put them on their shortlist made them the final choice. Compare that to 26% of those who put Barclays on their shortlist, and we already saw shortlist for Barclays, the ratio of people of awareness and visits going down to shortlist was the smallest for Barclays. So you've got Barclays losing people here at all places, really, essentially, in terms of comparators. We always get more people put brands on shortlists than visits, and that's a standard thing that happens in all of the funnels, because, as I said earlier, we have some people who say, okay, I'm going to put Barclays, First Direct, Halifax on my shortlist anyway. I don't need to visit those sites. Let's go and look at the ones I'm not so sure about. So that's a standard thing. But in terms of ratios then from visits to shortlist and shortlist to final, Barclays is practically hemorrhaging users at each of those steps, whereas you look at something like First Direct, they're being much more effective at pulling people through that. Santander, again, Santander doing well here as well, not quite as well in terms of ratio as First Direct, but again, doing well in pulling people through from pre-awareness to visits to shortlist and shortlist to final. So Santander leading the market at this moment for the current accounts, but it's very clear there's some other brands doing pretty efficiently behind them. So again, Nationwide is the other one it's interesting to bring out here. Nationwide starting with a low pre-research awareness at 30%, so significantly below Santander. 23% visits, so again a little bit lower, but still batting above their weight there. So again, their search and aggregator strategy pushing people to visit. 43% shortlisting and 17% final choice gives them a ratio of 40% at that end. So only just behind Santander, but having started from a much smaller base of pre-research awareness. So they are essentially, like First Direct, batting above their weight again here in terms of their online strategy. Whereas some of the other big brands you've seen here, you might have expected to do a bit better. So this is the Barclays of this world not fulfilling that pre-research promise. And then we take this final sort of look at why are people choosing the brands they choose. And now you see at this final point, the idea of having used them before is down at 33%. It was above 60 at the beginning. It's now 33% saying, oh, the final choice is based on I've used them before. Okay, it's not so much based on I've used them before. I've done the research online. I found that they allow for online banking. We've seen that as a key driver. But they've had the best accounts and offer for my needs is cited by 54%. The web and the research that they've done so far has shown consumers that actually getting the best account for offer for my need isn't as hard as it used to be. The web really enables me to find a product that suits my needs. Obviously, with some websites do this more efficiently than others, but it's the best tool that the brands have to communicate which current accounts they have and how each current account suits particular consumers specifically. So sort of tying up the shortlist piece here, tying up the DME, we're thinking about at the beginning, one of the absolute key drivers, the top two drivers, was I've used them before. And now we're saying post-research, people are starting to accept that actually best accounts offer for my needs. I can see that now. The web is efficiently showing me that there's an alternative out there. I don't have to gravitate back to a brand that I've necessarily used before. I can start to think about getting over my switching inertia because I appreciate now there are other bank accounts and offers for my needs, and there are other offers in the market that do functionality such as online banking, which if you're a current account provider is obviously great and bad in equal measure. It's great because it means realistically your website can communicate that you're an effective alternative to what people already have. People are prepared to do the research to find accounts and offers, to look at the functionality you have, and are swayed by that over what they already have. So obviously that's very encouraging if you're trying to encourage consumers to switch. Also means on the flip side, your existing customers perhaps are a little less loyal than they used to be. It's becoming more obvious to them that your service, your account has to be the absolute best to suit their needs because there are alternatives in the market. And I say it's becoming easier and easier to make that switch. So as a brand, you've got a website that not only has to communicate you have the best accounts and offers for new customers, but also reinforce to existing ones that what you have is still meeting their needs and there is no need for them to go anywhere else because you are still the best account and best offer for their needs because they will do the research and it is entirely possible to start making decisions based on these other information that's out there. Just reinforcing that here, Halifax particularly suffer from this, and we look at the data and we start to say what percentage of the consumers in this study were already customers of Halifax. So 22% of the customers, of the consumers that went through this process were already customers of Halifax. At the beginning, a quarter of them, just over a quarter of them, favoured Halifax. So 25% are going, okay, actually if I had to case another financial services product, I'd just gravitate back to Halifax. That would be the easiest thing to do. However, post-research, less than a fifth of them actually preferred Halifax. So Halifax actually lost a fair proportion of their initial preferences in this process. So not only did a fair amount of people come into this process with another preference, so about a quarter of them, so obviously 75% already had another preference. So already the online experience having an impact even before we did this piece of research. But then post this piece of research, even fewer preferring the brand. So actually, you've got a brand there that's hoping, obviously, to use its brand, use its power to continue to have these and hold on to these consumers. But actually, already a fair proportion of them were looking around. A fair portion saying, actually, for my next product, I would look at other brands. I wouldn't actually just gravitate towards Halifax. And specifically for current accounts, looking at this particular piece of research and having done this particular research right in the last 3 or 4 weeks, a Q1 study, less than a fifth of those actually preferred them. So they lost more than 80% of the customers they would have thought they would have had a good chance of holding on to. And it's just really showing the influence of that online research in pulling people away from the brands they've been established with over many years. As we've seen earlier, some brands suffer from this worse than others. Some brands lost a lot of initial preferences. Some brands were doing much worse at converting from visits to preference, from preference to visits to shortlist, shortlist to final preference. And on the flip side, a couple of other brands did much better. We saw Nationwide and First Direct move from initial preferences of, in the case of Nationwide, pre-research preference 10% to a 17% final preference. And First Direct, even more dramatic, First Direct moved from a pre-research preference of 5% to a post-research preference of 14% of consumers. And just to reiterate, I've had a quick question, the consumers in this particular study, in the DME, are around 300 consumers in the UK market, weighted to be representative of the UK market, in the market to do the research, to swap or to get a new current account in the next 3 months. So these are consumers we're talking to who are very much in the mindset of doing this research, and they're representative of your online target audience right now. DME is run, say, 4 times a year normally. This is a Q1 study, because obviously the marketing that people are doing changes over the year, so you do get different results. Different brands do more differently over different parts of the year, depending on what kind of external marketing they're doing and what the pushes are, which is why we do this on a very frequent basis. Q1 this year, I think we can safely say First Direct are really batting above their weight here, and using the online channel to really convince consumers that swapping is viable, and they have a product and service that really suits consumers' needs. And similarly, Nationwide are doing something very efficient here. On the flip side, Barclays have managed to change that 11% initial preference down to just a 6% final preference. So Barclays have lost more than about 50% of the consumers that originally preferred them, and actually not managed to change anybody else's mind either. So Barclays really suffering here. So you can see why some of that might be when we look specifically about why people chose Nationwide and First Direct. Quite different, as you probably would imagine, quite different brands, quite different histories. So there are different influences going into these brands, but you can see very, very strongly it's about the functionality and it's about the best account and offer for my needs. The key drivers for people choosing Nationwide and First Direct are the functionality that they offer. They make it easy to do my online banking. and I can be sure when I've finished my switch that I've got the best account and offer for my needs. It's not about so much about previous experience with these brands. It's not about necessarily recommendation from others. It's very much driven by the web channel communicating to consumers that have got the features, functionalities, and offer that suits my needs as a consumer specifically. Which is where the DSE comes in, because the digital sales effectiveness tool, the digital sales effectiveness benchmark, will look at the websites of these brands specifically and say, well, what is going on? How efficient are they at showing consumers the brand, the product offers, making consumers see that they've got offers that suits their needs, persuading people to trust them, comparing products, helping consumers make that final decision. So this is very much about the next stage in this process, about looking at the website themselves, and then how efficient are the brand websites in this final switching choice. The DME is looking, as I said earlier, is interviewing these consumers who do this blank screen study. So say there's 300 consumers do the blank screen study. We track everything they do, and then we ask them questions. I know I've had a question from somebody listening. We do ask them questions. We interview them about their experience. What did they find easy? What did they find hard? What they're looking for in that research process in the DME. And then now the DSE again is very strongly consumer research driven, combined with the best practice audit. So the DSE is taking consumers through websites specifically. So each website has a set of consumers that is asked to go to that particular website. So in the current account website, there's probably about 10 or 12 brands in the market, 10 or 12 brands in the study. So a set of consumers will be asked to go to First Direct, do a number of tasks. We'll track what they do. We'll see how successful they are. We'll ask them about their experience. We'll ask them to rate the features and functions on the site. And then we do the best practice audit as well, which is done by the external experts at Global Reviews. So having done the DME, we're now taking that sort of next step into, okay, we've seen these brands, we've seen what and how efficient they are at switching people's minds, how effective some are, more effective some are than others. And then we can start looking at the websites and saying, well, actually, let's look at the websites and see whether we can see what's going on here. Is there some best practice that brands can take from from the efficient brands in terms of helping to change consumers' minds? There's obviously, again, an awful lot of data within the DSE. There's about 500 data points just in the DSE itself. But it's just interesting to start taking some first looks at some of those brands that we were talking about and seeing what it actually means. So we saw First Direct doing very, very well in terms of coming in with a low awareness, coming in with very low preference, and actually coming out of the process as the fourth highest brand that were chosen. And if you start looking at the website, you can start to see why some of that might be, why consumers doing research might immediately be coming away going, actually, yes, this is the product for me, this is going to suit my needs. So you've got just the current account pieces of detail without getting even too far into the website. You've got a Which award. So immediately consumers are saying, okay, this isn't just First Direct saying, we're great, we're the one best for you. We've got Which saying they're a recommended current account provider. There's a link there to more awards. So First Direct being very upfront and saying, okay, we believe our product is great, but there's some external validation here of how great that is. Banking that fits your life, so the language and the promotion of the brand is very much, it's all about you, it's all about the consumer, it's going to help you suit your needs. Tick boxes make it very clear what it is that what's on offer. Beautifully designed internet banking, we've seen earlier, that's the absolute key driver. And you'd be surprised how poorly that is signposted on some other brands. You just thought it was an obvious one, but actually there are other brands not doing that terribly well. our service guarantee banking with First Direct is different at the bottom, and then the current account switched guarantee in big logo, which is this idea that people are going to be able to start to switch within a week, making it much easier for people to do this. So does the product suit my needs? As a consumer, I'm immediately looking at this going, okay, yeah, language is all very much about my needs. It's external validation from which, current account switch guarantee, why would I choose you? It's the language is very much aimed at banking fits your life is the product that suits your needs. So first impressions, persuading consumers that this is something that suits their needs. Similarly with Nationwide, we saw Nationwide was the second. Nationwide also did extremely well in terms of our ratios. Again, what have you got here? First thing we see is the Your Money best online banking provider. Again, great external validation. It's not just Nationwide shouting about how great we are. We've got another independent brand in the market telling consumers that we are the best online banking provider, alongside, again, that logo of the Switch Guarantee. Switch the best banking online provider in just 7 days. Don't take our word for it. Yep, Your Money. And then here we've got the three products, the key products they offer. Immediately on the landing page, the key tick boxes for those key products, the key elements of those products. So again, as a consumer doing my first piece of research, just sort of quick research, I'm going, our consumers looking at it going, actually, no, that does look as if I can find a product here that suits my needs. It's all very clear. It's all very laid out very easily. I'm going to do a bit more research, but I'm encouraged as a consumer that there's going to be a product here that suits my needs. And also, big push, very clear, one link from the home page to ways to bank. Managing your account is easy. So we saw, say, online banking absolutely vital for consumers. So what you've got here is First Direct showing that very clearly. Beautifully designed internet banking with a video shows you how to use it. Nationwide, slightly different approach. Nationwide, I've got this page saying it's got lots of different ways, but including online banking, mobile, telephone, ATM. So making it very clear that the multiple channels exist, but it's easy, simple and easy to manage your money online. So touching that element of consumers' needs as well. On the flip side, I'm not wishing to pick on Barclays, but I'm going to because they did quite badly in this particular study. You just compare what we've just seen with this. There is the switch guarantee, but it's over there all by itself. There's no other external validation here. There are no awards, no reviews, no voice of customer, which you've just seen, which when consumers are starting to do their research are very important. You've got a very top line piece of Barclays bank account, but that's all there is. There's a lot of other detail. People have to delve into the website, go and find and figure out what suits their needs. There's a lot of extraneous information here that as a consumer thinking to switch is unnecessary at this point. So tech pack, travel pack, there's a lot of information. Our consumers look at this and go, actually, no, it's too busy. It's not making me as a consumer feel, firstly, that I trust this brand, that I'm comfortable to doing business with them. I'm also not convinced they've got a product that suits my needs because there just isn't enough information here to tell me that. There's no real why choose you as Barclays here. So say there's no external validation, there's no why choose us, what's our USP, what is it that we'll do that other people won't do. And also, it's not, again, not pushed here, how can I bank? The previous pages, it's very quickly and easy for consumers to be very clear that they could do online banking, they could do banking across other channels. It was very easy to use the online banking. Again, nothing here that suggests to consumers that online banking is simple and easy and going to make their life more simple. So you can just see, without going into too much depth, why our brands and the consumers in the DME might be thinking how they are thinking about these different brands at this point, why they might be gravitating more towards First Direct in terms of it's a brand that suits my needs, it's got more information out there that I need. And then you can start to see how the DSE then says, okay, well, let's look at those results and then let's take a really much more in-depth look at the websites themselves and how they're introducing themselves, how they're introducing their brands, how they're allowing people to compare their offers, how they're helping people to make that final decision and then actually transact online. And often you will find the two match up very well in terms of joining that journey from discover through consideration through to act. So what does that actually mean for brands? It means that search results play a strong part in getting to shortlist. We saw that very, very strongly with First Direct and with Nationwide. Very strong call to action, very strong brand message from pre-research, lack of awareness through to final visits and choice. The search list playing a very, very strong part, and the aggregator. Users default often originally is to a brand they know. That's a strong force when we go in at the beginning of this shortlist, beginning of the funnel, but they are becoming increasingly swayed by functionality and suitability for their needs, and they know now that the web channel is a great resource for finding brands that will provide that functionality and provide that suitability for needs. It's absolutely vital that websites very clearly give users access to compare product options and make it easy for them to be reassured that product suits their needs. It's no longer enough to say, this is our product, this is it. The language, the functionality, the comparing tools have got to convince consumers the product suits their needs specifically. Consumers like to think they're individual, they have individual needs, that they're able to look at these products and make informed decisions themselves about which product suits their needs. They don't like the idea that it's going into a supermarket and taking a product off a shelf. They like to feel that it's been designed, that it is something that suits their needs specifically, and that they've been helped and reassured to make that choice. So brands need to give reasons for users to switch that make their offering different, that make consumers finish the process saying, okay, this product really suits my needs specifically. I trust you as a brand. I can do my online banking. I can switch quickly and easily, and I haven't been distracted by many, many other products on the way that have just feel like I'm walking through a supermarket shelf and having brands throw themselves at me as I do it. What is your value proposition? So thank you very much for your time this morning. Hopefully that's given you a good overview into the digital marketing experience, digital marketing effectiveness study that we run, the blank screen study, getting the consumers to find a brand, and then the digital sales effectiveness benchmark, which then looks at their websites to say, well, how efficient are they when you come, consumer, to their website? Are you showing them you've got the product suits their needs? Are you persuading them to buy? We do have a minute or so for questions if anybody wants to type one in. If not, very happy for you to follow up via email. You've got my email there on the screen. You've also got Liam's email, who's our commercial director in charge of the current accounts market in the UK and Europe, so he would be very happy to take emails as well. So if you've got any questions, let me know. Very happy to send presentations and webinar recordings around to attendees or to others who couldn't make it today. So thank you very much, Say, for your attendee this morning, for sitting there listening to me for an hour. I hope it was useful. If we don't have any more immediate questions, I will end the webinar now. But as I say, please do follow up on email if there are any other questions or you would like a copy of this webinar. So thank you very much for your time this morning. Have a good Wednesday.